Hello, ESM students. This is your middle school science department, plus
one.
And we are out here today in New Haven, Indiana. We're doing a virtual field trip to take a look at pond life and how you can use a microscope, maybe with some water source in your own backyard, to explore what kind of things live in a pond. So Mr. Staub is going to give us some information, and with that, go ahead.
Mr. Staub, approximately how old is said pond?
Well, the pond's about 25 to 30 years old.
For what purpose was it dug?
So behind, as you'll kind of see it later in the video probably, there's a 469 overpass, and it was dug for the purpose of the foundation of that overpass, the clay for that.
Thank you for your response. Is there any kind of wildlife that we could see in the pond?
Yeah, so there's going to be a number of fish that are in there. It's actually never been stocked, but because of people from the neighboring ponds, there's 3 ponds that are all connected. You'll see potentially some bluegill, some bass, some catfish, some perch, and some sunfish that are all living in there. In addition to that, we certainly regularly will see ducks and geese. Even some swans will come here sometimes. There's some crawdads, crayfish that live there. And there's some freshwater mollusks as well, which is pretty cool to look at.
Thank you. This is Mr. Burkhart reporting live from Mrs. Staub's parents' house, focused on the eagles.
And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at this pond. Hey, there's tons of frogs. Oh man, should we look for some maybe? Isn't this tadpole season? Whoa. Yeah, let's walk around them and show me where they're at. Mr. Staub, in the summertime, what kinds of things might come up here to the water?
So we've seen some turtles sometimes out and around, and we've also seen some water snakes will sun themselves right in this area. It gets pretty sunny out. Pretty cool.
Wow, a turtle with a broken shell too. Oh man.
So, Mr. Burkhart, why is a pond a great example of an ecosystem? Explain that to us a little bit.
That is a great question, Mr. Staub. So, my 6th graders, we had a chance to make a food chain, a food pyramid, or an energy pyramid, or a food web. And the base premises of that is that all energy originates from the sun. Okay, so plants are going to be the first originators of said sun through photosynthesis. They're producers, so they make their own food. And as we go up the food web or energy pyramid, there's going to be animals that eat said plant, and then more animals that eat said animal as we go up the chain. Okay, primary, going from producers, we're going to have primary consumers, secondary consumers, until we start working our way up to the top predator in our energy pyramid.
So as we look around this pond, what might be some of the producers that we're seeing?
Well, we see some of the weeds here that obviously are dying, but as spring and summer start rolling around, they will start greening up. And as we know, 6th graders especially, through chlorophyll, that is how the plants start gaining their energy and start feeding more off of the sun.
Great. And then you said that after the producers, then we have our primary consumers, correct?
Correct.
So what would be some examples in a typical pond ecosystem of primary consumers?
Okay, so especially in this pond, we know that there's some frogs. So a tadpole, for example, could be a primary consumer. So they would be eating off of the plants, and then there would be a bigger fish eating that tadpole.
Interesting.
Mr. Burkhart, back live again with Mr. Staub, and now we're talking succession. What is succession, and how does it apply to this scenario?
So succession is the idea that over time, as the ecosystems change and as the circumstances change, that you have a change of the organisms that live in that ecosystem. So, for example, if you started a primary succession, from geology perspective, volcanoes are a great example of primary succession. You have brand new land, earth there, and as it progresses, as time changes and progresses, you have then mosses and lichens introduced. You have then they start to break down the rocks and produce more soil, so more shrub grass and grasses can grow, and then eventually then trees can move in. And all of this can happen because things like birds that we have around here will drop seeds in their droppings and other things, which allows us to see kind of this progression. So when you look at this pond, for example, we said this pond is only about 25 or 30 years old. None of these trees that you are seeing have been planted here. They are all just things that either by wind or birds or other things have been dispersed to this location and have taken root, and allows us to see kind of this progression of succession, which is, I mean, just a really cool thing to see. You might even see something on a commercial lot, so like an old parking lot that has been there and is now lying vacant. Over time, you'll start to see rocks and grasses and things move in as the ice kind of forms cracks. So it's really incredible to see that change up just even close to you or around you.
Sixth graders, for example, with that would be a form of cross-pollination. We talk about birds and other insects cross-pollinating from one flower to another. That is an example of this progression. Wind, obviously, as you can tell, is very heavy, especially in this open area. So the more open area, the heavier the wind, the more progression we're going to see in this kind of ecosystem. Lifeguard birds are back on. We are extracting some water from the stems. We are going to see what is going to be in the pond. It's going to be quite an experiment. Let's do it.
Now, Mr. Burkhart, are you just getting water, or are you trying to get other little bits of things too?
We're trying to get other bits of things too. So Mr. Bornheimer stirred up some of the water to get some of the muck up, because there is actually living organisms inside the muck.
All right, now I'm looking in there, and Mr. Burkhart, that looks pretty clear. So are you sure there's stuff inside that water?
Positive. It's gonna happen.
All right. Let's go take a look and see what we can find.
All right, we'll do.
Burkhart, lifeguard Burkhart, out. Here we go.
And we're in the lab with Mr. Staub. He's going to prepare a slide from our pond sample. So how are we going to go about doing this?
All right, so we're going to use a pipette, And if you don't have a pipette, an eyedropper will work just as well. And we've extracted the water there. And when you do, if there is any like plant material or anything like that, sometimes getting a little bit of that isn't a bad thing, as long as you don't get too much of it, because what that's going to allow you to do is a lot of those microorganisms are going to feed off of that. So it's a great thing to even just get a little bit of that in the sample. Once you have that, you're going to try to put 1 drop. Depending on the cover slip, we have a pretty large cover slip, so we can probably get away with 2 of them. So now that we have our slide, we're going to hold that slide, have our 2 drops. What we're going to do is we're going to take our cover slip, we're going to hold it on the edges, and we are going to bring it kind of at an angle until it comes in contact with the water. Once it does, we can slowly lower it. And the reason we're doing that is that will hopefully eliminate some of the air bubbles that would otherwise form underneath there.
Well, thank you for joining us today on this virtual field trip to the pond. We thank lifeguard Burkhart and science extraordinaire Staub, and I guess I'm going skiing. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, that's
Pink headband.
pink headband. Yeah. All right. And we also just have to say thank you to our team of kiddos who decided to join us today. So can you guys say hello? Hi. And then, all right, very good. And yeah, so we're all excited to be out here today. We hope you get a chance to explore some of the things going on in your own backyard. Just remember, social distancing. We'll talk to you all later.
Stay healthy.
And safe. Bye.
Absolutely.
Mm.